It's taken a while, hasn't it, Manchester United fans? But this feels like a big step forward in the regeneration of the club. A confirmation, a reminder of the breaking news a few moments ago. Manchester United have now agreed a deal with Brentford to sign Bryan Mbeumo, and that deal is worth £71 million. Now, it's a deal comprising of £65 million guaranteed, plus a potential £6 million in add-ons. Now, the fixed portion of that will be paid in 4 instalments. That'll help Manchester United's PSR. He's been a long-term target for United this summer. They've already signed Matheus Cunha from Wolves. And Mbeumo has been back at Brentford training this week as they got their pre-season preparations underway. But it looks like, provided there's no snags, he will be beginning the season as a United player. Let's have a look at his stats. He finished last season in the Premier League with 20 goals. And he ranked first for expected assists and crosses attempted. He was also in the top 3 for distance covered in sprints and matches. Feels like an Amorim player.
For Lions opener, and at the top, Reds rival tune for £85 million striker Ekitike. Right, let's have a look at the Guardian's back page. A really good discussion. RNA held talks with Trump's son over Turnberry Open. Yeah, Turnberry last held the Open in 2009. McIlroy risks the Blues for Claret Jug, and they have a Sweden versus England special. Emma Hayes, Swedes are a big threat. Lucy Bronze were all under pressure, and Jonathan Newspeace covers no luxury for Lionesses. And in the Telegraph Sports section, well, they splash on Rory McIlroy ahead of the start of the Open. Rory is sitting pretty, and Newcastle and Liverpool in transfer war to sign Ekitike. A number of papers carrying that story as well. Welcome once again to Carl and to Riyadh. Good to see you both. OK, let's start off with the transfer news. Ugo Ekitike, a man in very sharp focus, especially if you are a Liverpool fan or a Newcastle fan. And let's have a look at the Telegraph on this one. It's a piece by Luke Edwards, Northern football writer. And so the situation here, Eintracht Frankfurt, ultimately, they're now in an increasingly powerful position because they hold the cards. Effectively, we could have not just a tug of war, effectively an auction for this man that they value so highly. Carl, what's your sort of take on the state of play right now? Where does this transfer go?
Very good question. I think you're completely correct in using the term auction or a bidding war, shall we say. It very much looks as if Newcastle are in the next stage of their development. And while they perhaps haven't got 2 or 3 of their transfer targets, Bryan Mbeumo or João Pedro, they are very much looking to strengthen their forward places. Hugo Ekitike fits that in theory if Alexander Isak is leaving. Now, the thing there is Alexander Isak is not leaving Newcastle United unless someone ponies up at least 120 million to begin a conversation. I believe Isak is of such a talent that the fee could go up to 140 million. So it appears that Liverpool, who are among several clubs in Europe, including Real Madrid, who've been very interested in Isak, made some sort of approach. And then once Newcastle went, absolutely not for sale, not unless you have 120 million burning in your back pocket, went, fair enough, let's go get Hugo Ekitike, which is fine, because both of these strikers are phenomenal threats in the transition. You give them the ball in open space, they are phenomenal. They're both volume shooters. They both also like drifting over to left-hand space, which sort of, you raise your eyebrow there about Newcastle supposed interest in there, because Ekitike and Isak in the same team, I'm not sure you're going to get the best out of them. So if Ekitike goes to Newcastle, that might be a Isak successor. But where does that leave Isak? I'm not entirely sure. It's all layers within layers. Yeah.
Well, I do wonder, actually, because it's all related. Riyadh, do you think this is Liverpool trying to unsettle Newcastle over Isak? Is it almost like a dummy play? We're going for him, but ultimately we want to try and force the situation where, well, OK, you buy Ekitike, but we'll come in for Isak. And do you think, Carl's made the point there about, how he fits or maybe doesn't fit Newcastle. Where do you think he fits better?
I think you have a cynical mind there, David. I actually share it. I can certainly imagine a scenario where there's a degree of kidology involved in this, and it's possibly, shall we say, the messaging that goes to Isak during this scenario. Look, if you're not going to kick up a stink at your end, we're looking at other targets now. Whether or not that's the case, who knows at this stage? But what we can say is, sort of, Ekitike, he's a fantastic player. He's 22 goals last season, 15 in the league. He gets assists as well. I remember him coming through and it not working out at PSG, but at Frankfurt, he's showing himself to be the kind of player that is going to be in demand. Now we have this chess game with Liverpool and Newcastle, and what's going to happen for Newcastle? It's a little bit of a battle on two fronts. I know that they've been outwardly briefing that, you know, they would want him as competition for Isak, not strictly as a replacement. But if you're Liverpool looking at this guy in the market, he is a signing that more than carries his weight on his own merits. I think we all know Isak would be the preferred option. He is Premier League proven. He's had a fantastic season. I usually express a degree of skepticism about some of these fees, but 100 million plus for him feels fair on the balance of what he's done last season. I also think that for Eddie Howe, there is an absolute imperative that he keeps him, as much for the messaging as anything else. What does it say about Newcastle and their project, their ambition, if they're losing this marquee player? I think that would be, if he stays, it represents a great summer for Newcastle, irrespective of who comes in. If he goes, it represents a bad summer, irrespective of whom they replace him with. So for them, the onus on keeping him is absolutely enormous.
Carl, I just wonder, £86 million is what Eintracht want for him. And given the fact that they've got two big Premier League clubs interested, you can understand why they would hold out for that. Is he a risk worth taking for that amount of money, no matter who buys him?
Yes, absolutely. I cannot stress enough how talented Ekitike is. Absolutely agree with previous points about how he didn't have the easiest route after going through PSG, but he has matured. He's thickened out physically, I will say, and he's getting better at riding contact with some of the bigger defenders in the Bundesliga. But the potential there, the goal scoring potential there, Hugo Ekitike is a player that I think the only reason why there isn't a bigger bidding war is because this 86 million, let's call it 100 million euros, that fee is perhaps a little bit too rich for the likes of Chelsea and Manchester United at this point in time. Strikers aren't cheap, but Ekitike is, in my eyes, 2 thumbs up, a good striker.
Gets the vote of confidence and then some from Carl. OK, let's switch focus and talk about Marcus Rashford. So criticism from Teddy Sheringham today, and now this. Juventus are interested in Marcus Rashford. According to Sky in Italy, they've begun to explore the conditions of a potential deal for the Manchester United forward. Barcelona also keen, as we know, but have made no approach at this stage. Rashford has publicly spoken of his desire to play for Barcelona. OK, before we get to Teddy Sheringham, the Juventus interest. I'm going to come back to you, Carl, because, you know, obviously this is very much your patch. Exploring the conditions of a potential deal is the wording. What do you make of it?
I mean, that's a vague inquiry, is it not? That's texting someone going, if this is available for sale, let me know. That's me trying to get Oasis tickets, texting a friend, shall we say.
OK, all right. But what we're seeing here is, obviously, you know, it feels that, you know, Marcus Rashford, time is starting now to run out. I mean, I know that we've got until, you know, the end of August, beginning of September for the transfer window to close. But Barcelona, they've made no formal approach at this point. And Riyadh, you know, Juventus showing a little bit of interest. What is it going to take for Rashford to get the exit he wants? I mean, I wonder what Teddy Sheringham thinks of this one, by the way. But to go to Juventus, would that make sense for the player?
Absolutely. I think anything that gets Marcus Rashford out of Manchester United at this stage is a good thing for him. Should he have agitated in the way that he did to leave is an entirely different question. I would probably say at the outset that I agree entirely with Teddy Sheringham's assessment of this. I don't really see how the circumstances of his situation at United, I don't see how that necessitates a move to join Barcelona. I think certainly he did well on loan at Aston Villa, but we're talking about a substantial amount of time now since we've seen Rashford play in a sustained manner at his best level. I'd love to see him move on, playing his football regularly, enjoying himself. Juventus historically is a great side. I think that would be a good level for him to get the move. I think he's probably going to have to be realistic about his salary. I think when we're talking about a salary in excess of 300 grand a week, is he worth that at the moment? No, he obviously has a contract that entitles him to that level currently, but if he wants to be playing regular football, then he needs to set his priorities, and accordingly, I would say the fact that we're now in the middle of July and a deal hasn't been wrapped up, and we've known his situation over at United for months now. If I was Rashford, I'd probably be a little bit concerned. I can't see where he naturally fits in at Barcelona. I think they've got Rafinha on the left wing, which I still think is Rashford's best position. He's just signed a new contract there. I think he's in considerably better form. Does he displace Lewandowski up front? No. So I'm curious why Barcelona would be interested. Well, I can see why they're interested in him, but I don't think they'd be looking at him as a starting option, and therefore that salary request needs to come down if that's the sticking point.
Carl, the Teddy Sheringham, I have to say, reading the piece and reading the specific quotes, then watching the interview in full, he does not hold back, does he? He's saying it's soul-destroying. He says, I hope Rashford doesn't get the move he's hankering for. What are your thoughts in terms of just the tone, the specific tone that he's used? Is that harsh, or do you think he's bang on with his comments?
This is Terry Sheringham. This is a gentleman who calls a spade a spade. He speaks from the heart, and he feels affronted by the current goings on at Manchester United. I would say, as a counterpoint, if he hopes Marcus Rashford doesn't get the move to Barcelona, what does he hope the move? Because Manchester United have made it very, very clear that they would like to move on Rashford, as well as the other 4 individuals who are in you can call it the bomb squad, you can call it the loft if you're from French football, the unwanted at the moment. And Marcus Rashford's shirt number, the number 10, has been handed over to Matheus Cunha. So he has to leave somewhere. And as we've spoken about his wages, the only clubs that can really afford him are some of the biggest clubs in the world and clubs that are playing Champions League football. If you are of the opinion that if you're a Manchester United fan and you want Marcus Rashford gone, it's probably in your interest that Barcelona retain some sort of interest in him, because that's a likely avenue there. When you talk about Barcelona, it's also very important you talk about Luis Diaz. We know Barcelona have interest in him as well. Luis Diaz has also been subject to a transfer bid inquiry, however you want to call it, from Bayern Munich as well. This is a really interesting time in European football in that there's not too many strikers, and they all come with a 60 to 80, perhaps even more million price tag. But there's a surplus, as there is, of left-sided wingers, Marcus Rashford's best position, that many have said, which makes movement a little bit difficult. That's probably why Marcus Rashford, when he was talking to streamers in Spain, talked about how he's learning more about playing centre forward. I think if he does go to Barcelona, which is no guarantee, he might be sharing playing time with Lewandowski as a backup number 9, as much as being a left-sided option next to Rafinha and others. There's so many moving parts to this, and I'd thoroughly expect this to run on and on and on right up until the end of the transfer window. Yeah, and a few others in similar positions: Garnacho, Sancho, Anthony, Tyrrell, Malacia, the ones that you refer to there, Carl. OK, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll look at more of the sports stories
in the morning's newspapers, including this in the Mail. Riyadh at Royal Portrush. We'll focus on his piece. Bring it on. Rory vows to embrace the pressure of trying to win the Open on home soil. Stay with us. Back pages tonight. Welcome back to you at home. Welcome back to the Athletics Manchester United correspondent Carl Anker and also the Daily Mail's chief sports feature writer Riyadh Al Samurai. OK, we're going to talk Women's Euros and head to The Guardian, who've got a Sweden versus England special with Emma Hayes, Lucy Bronze and friend of the show, Jonathan Liu, all featured here. So, Riyadh, how big a threat, as Emma Hayes said, are Sweden, especially given this incredible unbeaten run that they're on and the way that they dismantled Germany in topping their group?
Yeah, I think it's an incredibly dangerous match. I think we've obviously all, as is pretty standard for a major championship, sort of gone through undulations with this side so far. Obviously, since the defeat to France, when our let's just say our expectations went through the floor, and it's obviously improved a lot against the Netherlands and against Wales. So, on paper, you might make the argument that the Lionesses our favourite, but Emma Hayes makes some really good points in there. So aside from the sort of 15-game unbeaten run, you look at the Swedish team on paper, and I think she makes the point that if you were to put them pound for pound with sort of against the teams they're up against in the competition, they might be around about 7th. But clearly the reality is different, and they've also moved on a huge amount since they met in the Euros in 2022, and Lionesses won 4-0. It's moved on a lot, as the sum of their parts is really quite impressive. We know that they've got a big threat from set pieces. They crushed Germany in the group stages, so it is going to be a tough match. But we have seen this quite impressive progress from Wiegmann's team in Switzerland, and I can remember coming on the show a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about it. We had the three retirements prior to the tournament, and it really felt like a knife edge moment for Wiegmann. Is this going to be the tournament too far where it all imploded? And if I'm honest, I thought it probably would be, but the performance against the Netherlands, I think was superb. Wales, they were clearly the stronger side, and that one went a little bit more with the form book, we should say. But they have turned it around. They have got that escalating belief, and they have got an excellent squad. So when those stars align, you do look at it and think that they're in a very strong position. I would also say they've got the favourable side of the draw, given that Spain are on the other side. So this is an absolutely enormous test for them. If they come through it with the momentum that they would take from it, I wouldn't necessarily want to put any limits on where it's going to go from there.
There's this phrase that's come up quite a lot, a mantra, Carl, which is a proper England performance. We've heard Lucy Bronze talk about it. We heard, obviously, Serena Wiegmann mention it. What does that mean to you? And is there any danger that it's kind of overused? It could be something that can come back to bite you a little bit?
My interpretation of it is proper execution of what Serena wants from her players. This England team has, to my mind, one of the highest ceilings of everyone at the Euros. It's to them in Spain, as far as I'm concerned. However, the floor, when players aren't focusing on their jobs at hand, you can get results like against France. And I think proper England is the camp saying, pay attention, do your jobs properly, do proper England stuff. So a mantra to lock in, as the Gen Z parlance is absolutely fine. This matchup is going to be fascinating because Sweden have become a team that have gone about eliminating unforced errors, whereas England seem to be a little bit prone to them. I think Nikita Paris in the last 2 or 3 days has been excellent, talking about the double-edged sword that is Lauren James, who is just a phenomenal football player, but there are questions over whether or not she's better as a number 10 or on the left, and what happens when the ball is lost and Lauren James is in very, very advanced areas. I think the interplay between James and Ella Toon, if Ella Toon does start, is going to be really, really key. And I'm really impressed by the strength of Sweden's fullbacks as well. This is going to be a great match. I highly recommend everyone watches this.
Yeah, we'll definitely be keeping across it for sure. Let's talk about something else which is on tomorrow, and we're showing live on Sky Sports. That's, of course, the Open. And Riyadh, you've written a piece from where you are, Raw Port Rush, about to see 4 days of cracking links golf, I'm sure. Bring it on. Using the word pressure. Now, interesting, that word, especially when it's, you know, talking about Rory McIlroy. How much pressure is there on this man, given he's at home, but given he's now done the career Grand Slam? Do you sense that, you know, it's a little bit more of a relaxed Rory McIlroy that'll be teeing it up with Tommy Fleetwood and Justin Thomas tomorrow?
I say it is, but I very much doubt it. I wrote a column about Rory McIlroy last weekend and the expectation, and I kind of put forward my theory. I don't think any sportsman from the UK, in certainly in recent years, has had as much sustained pressure as him. And we've seen it with Lewis Hamilton, but we made mitigations for the car that he's driving. We had it in absolutely astronomical levels for Andy Murray, but a third of his career was lost to injury. If you look to sort of the last 7 or 8 years, and then you have Andy Murray. Then you have Rory McIlroy, who 4 times a year for 18 seasons now, pretty much, has faced the question: is Rory going to win? If he doesn't win, is it a disaster? And we got to the point. If we look at Pinehurst, we look at LA Country Club, we look at St Andrews, majors where Rory McIlroy would finish in the top 2, 3, 4 positions, and they would be described as failures. So this man is under constant expectation, and now he's playing in an Open at Port Rush, where we shouldn't forget, in 2019, he went there, and on the first tee, his first shot, he carved out of bounds on the left. He took a quadruple bogey 8 and missed the cut. And that entire week, we'd been talking about Rory as the overwhelming favourite to win. Now he goes back. Now, this is an interesting scenario. He has a putting coach, Brad Faxon, who is a legend of the game in the US, but he's also quite indiscreet. And he's mentioned this week that Rory has twice played that first hole and twice gone out of bounds on Monday and Tuesday. I don't know if Rory will thank him for pointing that out, but he will. He is the main show in town here again. He is the reigning Masters champion. He is the world number 2. He comes here on the back of quite a prolonged period of difficult form, but there are certainly some very strong signs of him turning that around in Scotland last week. I was over there covering it. His mood has improved. He says he's got his motivation back. He's certainly got a spring in his step, but he comes into this tournament where his face is on every billboard. He is on the back page of every newspaper. He is the person who the 260,000 fans who are going to be there across the week. He's the guy most of them are coming to watch, and I am really interested to see how he can handle that, because he has worn the expectation heavily. He described it earlier this week as like being on a hamster wheel, the relentlessness of professional golf, and now he comes into this Open where all eyes are on him. I think it's going to be fascinating to see how he gets on, but in his favour is he does appear to be playing well, except for that first hole at Port Rush.
OK, we've got literally 30 seconds to speak about the Lions. Apologies, Carl, you're going to have to be super concise here. Confirmation, of course, of Andy Farrell's selection for the first test against the Wallabies on Good Morning Sports Sounds from 7. All the talk about Tom Curry coming in, but Owen Farrell and Henry Pollock missing out, Carl.
Totally makes sense. Owen Farrell's very much viewed as a dressing room element rather than someone who's going to contribute to the first test. It very much seems that this is going to be a Lions that is going to be very, very, very physical, a lot of running power, which is, that's a very good way to play against Australia. Very much looking forward to it. Yeah, well, we will see, because the first of 3 tests, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion, but definitely a big chance this for the Lions to come back with some silverware. Well, thank you very much indeed, guys. Really appreciate your time. If you missed any of the show, another chance to see Back Pages tonight at 1:30 the hour. The show also available as a podcast. Just download Back Pages on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your pods.
We'll start this hour with the news which will provide some real relief for Manchester United fans. In the last hour, they finally agreed a deal with Brentford for the signing of Bryan Mbeumo. They've gone backwards, they've gone forwards, they've gone backwards, they've gone forwards. Finally, the deal is agreed. I'm joined by Dharmesh Sheth. Dharmesh, what else can you tell us about this one?
Yeah, it looks like the saga is close to coming to an end. This started about 6 weeks ago, didn't it? Manchester United making that bid of £45 million plus £10 million in performance-related add-ons. Then another bid went in worth £62.5 million. I think Brentford were really, really steadfast and stubborn in their approach to this. They had a figure in mind and they said, we are not going to go anywhere below that. And finally, the two clubs have met, and it is a deal worth £71 million. Manchester United will pay an initial fee of £65 million plus £6 million in performance-related add-ons. The initial fee, the £65 million, will be paid in 4 instalments. And that's where the information I was getting was where the crux of this deal was going to be. Manchester United weren't too far away on the overall fee. It was always going to come down to the structure that would suit both Brentford and Manchester United. Because if it had been in like 3 instalments, that probably wouldn't have worked for United on the one hand. But with it being 4 instalments now, they get to spread that cost over 4 periods as opposed to just 3 instalments. So the deal is now agreed. We expect Bryan Mbeumo to have a medical in the coming days, and there is a growing optimism that he will be part of Manchester United's squad for their pre-season tour of the United States, and they take off for that tour on Tuesday.
OK, so a bit of a rush from a Manchester United point of view. Brentford ended the season in such great shape, but they've now lost their manager, gone to Tottenham. They've lost their captain, gone to Arsenal. Now they've lost their top scorer off to Manchester United. Where does it leave them?
I mean, they have got good money for Bryan Mbeumo. They have got good money for Christian Norgard as well, who you mentioned has gone to Arsenal. It was, of course, a big blow losing Thomas Frank, the head coach, who went to Tottenham Hotspur. But focus will now, I guess, be on Johan Wissa. And the noises we've been hearing throughout this transfer window is that Brentford do not want to sell both Bryan Mbeumo and Johan Wissa in the same transfer window. Now, we do know that alongside the interest in Bryan Mbeumo from Manchester United, there has been big interest in Johan Wissa, not least from Newcastle United, because they've turned their attention to Wissa following the news that Liverpool are pursuing a deal for Hugo Ekitike. Nottingham Forest have bid for Johan Wissa before. They remain interested, and I'm sure Thomas Frank himself, when he faces the media in around an hour or so from now, will be asked the question whether Tottenham Hotspur are still interested in Johan Wissa, because of course he managed him so well last season. But the noises we're getting right now is that Brentford aren't under any pressure to sell. He's got a year left on his contract, but crucially, there's an option to extend that contract by a further year. They do not want to sell both Mbeumo and Wissa in the same transfer window. I know you can never say never, because if an incredible bid was to come in, Brentford probably would have to think about it. But the amount of goals that they would lose from last season if both of those players were to leave, I don't think Brentford want to go down that way.
Yeah, I don't think their fans would want that either. As for Manchester United, closing in on a second big transfer of the summer, Matheus Cunha's already signed and Mbeumo looks like he's well on his way. Where will they shift their focus next, do you think?
In a word, exits. I think they want to generate some money, particularly from those 5 players that they gave a little bit of extra time to try and sort out their futures. Marcus Rashford, Jadon Sancho, Alejandro Garnacho, Anthony and Tyrell Malacia. Let's start with Rashford. Juventus, we're told, have explored the conditions of a deal for Marcus Rashford, as have Barcelona. We know Barcelona have got a long-standing interest, and it's mutual because Marcus Rashford wants to go to Barcelona. However, the transfer fee and the personal terms, both of those could prove to be stumbling blocks. Hence why, after he went on loan to Aston Villa last season, for the second half of last season, you can't rule out another loan in this transfer window either. I think it would suit Barcelona, probably not so much Manchester United, because they would prefer a permanent deal. However, if they were to do a loan deal, it would be a creative loan. Manchester United would probably want an obligation attached to that deal. Aside of Marcus Rashford, we mentioned Jadon Sancho. Juventus, again, they are exploring a deal for Jadon Sancho. We do know that they've been in talks with Manchester United over a transfer fee. They've been in talks with Sancho's representatives over personal terms. Again, What would prove to be more of a stumbling block would be the personal terms because of the wages that Jadon Sancho is on. As far as Juventus are concerned, their focus at the moment is to finalise the deal for Porto's Francisco Conceição. That was the number one priority. And people thought, well, is it one or the other? It's our information that they do want to bring in both, but to bring in Sancho as well as Conceição, they are likely to have to make sales. Now, Timothy Weah is of big interest to Marseille. Nico Gonzalez is of interest to Inter and Atletico Madrid. If they can sell one or both of those, then maybe the Sancho deal is a realistic one. As for Antony, we do know that Real Betis are desperate to sign Antony. It's just very problematic to do that deal on a permanent basis simply because Real Betis haven't really got the finances to do that. They want to do another loan. United will want an obligation attached to that. Interestingly, Bayer Leverkusen, their head coach is Erik ten Hag. He was asked about Antony. He says he's like a son to me. Am I interested now? Not at the moment, but in the future, you can never tell. So I think with regard to exits, it might just drag on a little bit because clubs who are interested in these players will probably spot an opportunity that Manchester United want these players out. Let's see what kind of deal we can get for them.
First, Manchester United treble winner Teddy Sheringham has criticised Marcus Rashford's professionalism and claims he doesn't deserve a move to Barcelona. Now, Rashford has been keen to join the Spanish champions since January after he was exiled by the current boss, Ruben Amorim. Well, Rashford has returned to the club's training base this week, despite being offered extra time following his loan at Aston Villa. The England forward is one of 5 United players who said they want to leave Old Trafford this summer. Last week, we reported that Rashford was Barcelona's #1 target for the left wing. Well, this is what Sheringham said. If you assess where Marcus Rashford is as a professional footballer, you strive as a youngster to get to the very top and play for clubs like Manchester United. And when you're there, you appreciate it. You don't throw it away and say you want to leave. I find the whole episode very soul-destroying compared to the way I was back in the day and how I strove to get the privilege to play for such a huge football club. To hear someone talking the way he is talking, saying he wants out, I didn't like Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang doing it in Arsenal. I thought it was soul-destroying, and I hope Rashford doesn't get the move that he's hankering for. From my perspective, he goes on to say, if you go from Manchester United to Barcelona, that is a step up that he hasn't deserved. We mentioned Rashford was one of 5 players, didn't we, looking to leave United alongside Alejandro Garnacho, Jadon Sancho, Antony and Tyrell Malacia. Well, Sheringham believes the publicity surrounding their potential exits has stagnated the club's summer transfer business. This is what he had to say about that. It's very easy to spend money on players, but it's hard to recoup it. It seems quiet, but I bet there's a lot going on behind the scenes at Manchester United. Other clubs know United's position. They've made it known that they're looking to sell around 5 players, which signals to other clubs to make them ridiculous offers. I would assume that what football clubs are doing around Europe and Manchester United are turning them down at the moment. The longer that goes on, I reckon those offers might be a little less ridiculous. But United want these players off the books. They've made their bed and they've got to lie in it. They'll probably take anything from a quarter to a fifth of their asking price for some of them. Goodness me. Teddy Sheringham, tell us how it is. Good quotes from him, James Green. I mean, you're talking transfers.
Good way of delivering it as well.
Thank you very much. Yes, yeah, I've only been doing it 21 years.
Highly entertaining.
Yeah, well, I think I can see where he's coming from, and you can hear the exasperation in his quotes there. But, it's understandable because obviously the transfer window's wide open. Everyone's doing their business, and it could be that people are going to glean these players away for cheap. So are Manchester United anywhere near the transfer window at the moment?
Well, I think we're waiting to find out, really. At the moment, with the movement with Brian and Mbeumo has gone a little bit quiet for now. I expect that to kind of happen. But they made that early signing of Matheus Cunha. I guess the question is, are Manchester United perhaps waiting to sell some players first before they can then go big into the markets?
Not cheaply, says Teddy.
Marcus Rashford, Alejandro Garnacho, etc., to leave. So, but they're leaving Teddy Sheringham exasperated.
Yes.
The noise has died down over the course of the last 24, 48 hours. But once again, it's ramped up today because Eddie Howe has been speaking to the media for the first time since the end of last season. And it comes off the back of a disappointing pre-season game in Glasgow where they were beaten by Brendan Rodgers, Celtic 4-0. So not only have you got the noise about Alexander Isak this week, the disappointment of missing out on Hugo Ekitike, but suddenly you've got a poor performance as well, which won't go down with the home fans. It won't go down with Eddie Howe and his backroom team as well. So you just get the sense that they're in a bit of a malaise at the moment. There's a lot of negativity around the football club, and this has been a really tough window. So let's see what the Newcastle manager had to say when asked about Alexander Isak and the situation with regards to his future. Here's what he said after that game with Celtic.
Yeah, we wanted more. I think from my perspective, when you're going into pre-season, you want your squad together from the first day, and you want to work on everything that you need to work on. It's difficult to do that later on in pre-season because it takes time for our work to feed into the players. But whatever happens, and we have to adapt. So am I confident? I'm confident we will try our very, very best to do it. I've got no guarantees beyond that. My wish was for us to do our business early, and we certainly tried, but it wasn't to be. We've had a frustrating time in terms of losing targets to other clubs. I have to be very open with that. That's happened on several occasions, but you just have to accept it. In order for a transfer to really work, in my opinion, the player has to be desperate to come to your club, and if we don't get that, the transfer doesn't work. So we're seeking players that are good enough, that are desperate to come, and that can make the difference, that they're on short supply for us. But we're confident that we can try and get some more players in to strengthen the depth of the squad. We're certainly aware that we need to.
He's often very open and honest, isn't he, in his press conferences, Eddie Howe? That's why we like listening to him. But often you hear a manager there just say, well, look, no, he's not for sale, he's staying. So why wouldn't he just say that? By not guaranteeing that he's going to be there, it just opens up more questions, doesn't it?
Yeah, I always remember, based on your question there, I always remember one thing that Ralph Hasenhüttl said when he came into Southampton as the new Southampton boss, because he was asked in the press conference, can you guarantee that you'll keep Southampton in the Premier League? And his response was, if you want a guarantee, buy a washing machine. There are no guarantees
they're not
in football. Guaranteed. And Eddie Howe absolutely couldn't sit there in front of the media today after that game and say, I guarantee that Alexander Isak will be a Newcastle player on September the 2nd. And of course, he knows that whilst he wants to keep the player, and he said today the player's happy at Newcastle, he's excited about the challenge of Champions League football, he knows that there is this noise. Now, Newcastle hold the cards at the moment because he does have 3 years left on his current Newcastle deal. So therefore, it's not like he's into the last year or two where it becomes a little bit easier for the player to agitate for a move. He knows he's got a long-term contract in the North East and he's still not going anywhere. But the fact that he was with the team in Austria and then potentially travelling to Celtic for the game, but with all of this noise, Eddie Howe has decided absolutely it's not the right thing to do for you to be a part of this squad. If you're not going to play, then I don't want you sat in the stand with all the noise surrounding you at the moment. So therefore, it's best for the club and for you personally if we send you back home. And this is going to be a real, tussle over the course of the next few days and weeks, because Eddie Howe's going to have to get Alexander Isak focused on playing for Newcastle, focused on training and getting himself ready and fit for the new season. But of course, it feels like, based on what's going on, this noise is going to continue and continue.
Well, it's interesting as well, isn't it? Because, for example, Morgan Gibbs-White, there's a lot of noise about him. He played a half for Nottingham Forest today in their game against Monaco. Whereas Eddie Howe's taken a different tack with Isak. So again, that'll just get people thinking. He
did make reference to the fact that he wasn't playing because he wanted to manage his body, manage the load on his body in the early stages of pre-season. Now, Alexander Isak's the type of player that would probably start pretty much every game for Newcastle. Premier League matches, Champions League matches, and he has had a few niggling injuries over the course of the last year or two. So therefore, they're just protecting him and looking after him. And that's something Eddie Howe's always done. As a player, he suffered with knee problems himself, and he had to be managed. He couldn't train on certain days, but to get the best out of him on a Saturday, they had to protect him and look after his body. So that was one of the things that Eddie Howe said after the game today. It's not just about the noise surrounding his future. We need to protect him and look after him as well.
And just quickly before we finish, so if Liverpool, say, get Ekitike, if Arsenal get Gyökeres, both of those looking like that could well happen, who's going to be able to afford £150 million for Alexander Isak?
Well, Newcastle will say no one, thankfully. We know there's been a lot of noise from other sides, and there's been teams in Europe that have looked at him. There's been some reports this week that have even suggested that the Saudi Arabia Pro League sides have been looking at possibly taking Alexander Isak, but he's working for PIF, who own Newcastle at the moment, so that one seems to be very unlikely. I think with all of this noise, it will be a case of, right, let's just let things die down and let's get you focusing on what you do, and that's scoring goals and playing for Newcastle United. And as Eddie has said today, he's focused on the football club. He enjoys playing with his teammates. They've just signed Anthony Elanga, one of his international teammates as well. So the fact they've got that partnership there for this season, that will be a big thing that keeps Alexander Isak at the football club. It's just one to keep an eye on. And you know, in transfer windows, things twist and turn in one direction and then another, and you get the feeling this will be something very similar. Just on Hugo Ekitike, we know that Liverpool are very relaxed about the situation at the moment. They are progressing with their talks, which centre around a package of about £75 million. We know that Eintracht Frankfurt are very meticulous in the way they do business, and Liverpool are relaxed with that situation. They're not rushing to get this one done over the line in the next 24 to 48 hours. They're having a dialogue, they're communicating. Hugo Ekitike was involved for Eintracht Frankfurt today, but only on the bench, didn't get onto the pitch. What does that mean? Who knows? But we'll keep talking about it, for sure.
We will. Thanks, Mark. I'm glad you came back from Bournemouth.
Nice to see you.
It's the start of a new week, so could we see some more developments in transfers today? James Savundra is here to bring us all the latest. Firstly, James, we're going to start with a recap of what happened over the weekend, and Arsenal, the big movers with Victor Gyökeres and Noni Madueke.
Yeah, so Arsenal closing in now on signing Victor Gyökeres from Sporting. We understand they're close to agreeing a deal now for the striker, a striker they've been looking for such a long period of time. They've agreed to pay a fixed fee around £55 million. Now, negotiations continue over the add-on. Sporting want around €10 million. Gyökeres clearly wants to join. Arsenal's the club he wants to play for this season. Personal terms, we're not expecting those to be a problem. And at the same time, Arsenal are also finalising a deal for Noni Madueke. We can confirm he's due to have a medical today at Arsenal. He's back in London finalising this move from Chelsea to Arsenal. In terms of the fee, we understand its initial fee of £48.5 million with £3.5 million in add-ons. So Arsenal really have been busy over the course of the last few weeks. Martin Zubimendi through the door, so's Kepa, Christian Norgard, and Arsenal now very close to signing two more players. Noni Madueke, that could be confirmed this week.
Is there a third as well? News about a centre-back, I think, near the stadium?
Yes, we think there may be developments today on this. Arsenal remain in talks with Valencia around the signing of Christian Mosquera. Now, they had a bid rejected last month around £30 million. Valencia value him around £25 million, but there is optimism that there can be a compromise found on the fee, and that could come over the course of the next 24 to 48 hours. He's entered the final year of his contract. He's turned down a new contract with Valencia, so it does look like his future is elsewhere. He's turned down a new deal there because he wants to join Arsenal and Mikel Arteta, and for that reason we're not expecting personal terms are going to be a problem. So it's been a big summer. Arsenal have been planning, and they're activating that right now with these number of transfers.
James, what else is on the radar this week?
Well, it's going to be a fascinating week when it comes to Morgan Gibbs-White and his future at Nottingham Forest. Now, last week we confirmed that Tottenham triggered a £60 million release clause in his contract at Nottingham Forest. However, Forest consider the move off, and they're consulting their lawyers over potential legal action. Fresh news today because Morgan Gibbs-White has registered for training at Nottingham Forest today, and the club have put out a tweet with a picture of Morgan Gibbs-White at the training ground today. You can see him there. Now, Forest, they're consulting their lawyers over potential legal action because what they feel it has been an illegal approach from Spurs, who triggered the £60 million release clause. And we understand, whilst he remains a Nottingham Forest player and whilst this dispute remains ongoing, that he will continue to train with Nottingham Forest and prepare for the new season. So Tottenham still hopeful a deal can be completed. But this morning, back at Nottingham Forest, back for pre-season training. A few other bits happening this week. Elsewhere, we're expecting Mbeumo to be a player of interest once again. Will this finally be the week that Manchester United make him a Manchester United player? We're expecting United to make an offer soon. They're optimistic of a deal to sign him. They'd love him to be there in time to be part of their pre-season squad. They head to America very shortly. Their last offer wasn't too far away in terms of the actual fee, but will the too far away in terms of structure of the third offer, if when it comes in, be acceptable for Brentford? And finally, what feels like a long drawn-out saga
can come to an end. And finally, a quick line on Napoli and Victor Osimhen. Where's he going this summer? We speak about him in every single transfer window. Well, Napoli have rejected another bid from Galatasaray worth more than £60 million. So Galatasaray offered a bid worth £60 million in 5 instalments, but we understand Napoli want around £65 million in 2 instalments. So it's clearly a situation where he's not moving just yet. Al Hilal may come back into the race once again. Juventus, there's still interest there. Clearly one of the best goal scorers in world football. Napoli want to sell him in this transfer window. He's got 1 year left in his contract. Where's he going to end up? At this moment in time, not Galatasaray, but you wouldn't think they're too far away right now.
First, Liverpool have rejected a £58.5 million bid from Bayern Munich for their forward Luis Diaz. James Savundra is with us to talk about that. So where are we with this?
Well, it's an offer that Liverpool rejected outright immediately. He's a player that's not for sale, and Liverpool have made clear to a number of interested clubs this summer, the likes of Bayern Munich and Barcelona, they don't want to sell Luis Diaz in this transfer window. He spoke to the media about a month ago, and he said that his representatives had been speaking to other clubs, though he says, I've got 2 years left on my contract at Liverpool, and I'm happy to see out those 2 years at Liverpool. Liverpool do not want to sell him this summer. He's an important part of their plans. He played a really important role in helping them lift the 20th Premier League title, the 20th top flight title last season. The interesting thing is, though, as I say, 2 years left on his contract. There are no active conversations, no planned conversations around renewing a deal and staying beyond the 2 years he's got left at Liverpool.
Right. We don't think this is the end of the story, though, do we, James?
Sky in Germany are reporting that Bayern Munich are preparing a second offer. And what will Liverpool's stance be then when another bigger offer comes in for Luis Diaz? They don't want any further bids. They consider him not for sale in this transfer window. But Bayern Munich feel that he wants to join the club this summer. And it's Sky in Germany's understanding that Bayern Munich are prepared to offer him a 4-year contract. He's 28, he turns 29 next year. Will there be a point from a business perspective where Liverpool weigh up the move, weigh up the money and see, well, if we're not going to extend this contract by another 1 or 2 years, then this arguably is the best summer in terms of recouping as much money as possible. Though, of course, Liverpool want to sign a striker in this transfer window. They don't want to be replacing Luis Diaz. They see him as a really important player this season and next season. So if they don't extend his contract, there's a feeling he could leave for free in 2 years' time. And next summer, they won't get this sort of money because they only have 1 year left on his contract. Absolutely fascinating, this. Liverpool stance, he's not for sale, but Bayern Munich really want to test that.
Newcastle have stepped up their interest in long-term target Hugo Ekitike. There have been talks with Eintracht Frankfurt over what would be a club record fee for the forward. Delighted to say we can get more on this now and speak to Sky Germany reporter Dennis Bayer. Dennis, thanks very much for joining us. We know the two clubs have held talks over the transfer. As far as you know, where are we as it stands?
We're at the stage where Eintracht Frankfurt is waiting for an offer from Newcastle. We know that there are several other clubs in talks or having Ekitike on their list, but Newcastle is the most concrete right now. But there has not been sent an offer to Eintracht Frankfurt by now. But the club is expecting Ekitike to potentially leave this summer for months now. So they were thinking that he could be one of those guys who can leave in summer, I think, from the start of the year. So they had a plan with him. They expect him to potentially leave, but they want money for him. There's a price tag around 100 million euros that Markus Krösche won't go away from. So it's a major price tag for Hugo Ekitike, but right away there is no offer that has been sent to Eintracht Frankfurt yet.
Now, of course, Newcastle already have a front man and a pretty good one as well in Alexander Isak. Could you see the two of them playing together? Is Ekitike versatile enough to do so?
I would say so too. Isak is a tremendous striker, but Ekitike could be a great player alongside Isak because he's so versatile. He could be a player that can get the ball. You can always give him the ball, and he can defend the ball and itself against all the other defenders. He can pass the ball away very good, but on the other side, he's very, very fast. He likes to dribble, and he likes to go deep. He likes to score goals. So he has both parts that you want as a striker. He can keep the ball, he can protect the ball, he can put his other teammates in scenes, and he can do it himself. So he's very versatile, and he can play with a lot of different striker types because of that. For example, you have a guy in the Premier League right now called Omar Mamouche. He played with Ekitike 1 year ago, and they harmonized perfectly. And after that, Ekitike did it more or less himself. So he can do it both. He can do it as a single striker, and he can do it as a number 2 striker.
Right, we just started. Already there's breaking news. Dharmesh Sheth is here. What have you got?
Yeah, it's breaking transfer news. It is what we have been expecting, Mike. Arsenal have announced the signing of Noni Madueke from Chelsea in a deal worth £52 million. Arsenal will pay Chelsea an initial £48.5 million plus £3.5 million in performance-related add-ons. Madueke himself will sign a 5-year contract at Arsenal. He leaves Chelsea after 2.5 years. Remember, they signed him from PSV Eindhoven for £29 million. So if he fulfills all of these conditions, then Chelsea will have made a £23 million profit. Now, just one other extra bit of information. We do know that Arsenal fly out for their pre-season tour of Asia tomorrow. Madueke won't be part of that squad because, remember, he was with Chelsea at the FIFA Club World Cup, so he's been given extra time off before he joins up with the Arsenal squad, so he won't be part of that squad. A little bit on the deal, Arsenal sporting director Andrea Berta, he was key in these negotiations, and Mikel Arteta was key in manager-to-player talks with regard to Madueke. So Arsenal have got their man. It is their 4th signing of this transfer window. Kepa, the goalkeeper, Christian Norgard, the midfielder, Martin Zubimendi, the midfielder, and Noni Madueke, and more to come.
Arsenal mean business. Dharmesh, thank you very much. Well, Madueke has posted on social media and he said this: "Dear Chelsea Football Club, I want to thank you for the last 3 or so years. To every staff member that helped me along this journey, thank you. To my teammates, thank you for everything. I leave with only love and admiration for you guys. We achieved so much this season, and I honestly wish you guys nothing but the best. To Enzo Maresca, it was a privilege to play under you. Thank you for trying to better me as a player and as a person. Lastly, thank you to every single Chelsea fan. Thank you for the love, the praise, and also the criticism. I appreciate it all. I leave here with nothing but fond memories."
Arsenal fans are still waiting for an announcement on the deal to sign Victor Gyökeres from Sporting Lisbon. Let's get the latest and speak to the Portuguese football journalist David Novo, who works for The Record. Hello, David. The last time we spoke to you, you told us they were close to finalising a deal. What's the hold-up?
Hello, guys. Thanks for having me. I said that, and I say the same thing. They are close, really close to make the deal. That's the thing. It's a small margin of 2.5 million euros in one of the bonuses. That's it's almost nothing when we are talking about a deal of 80 million euros, but it's enough to keep the clubs apart, to close this deal. It's a strange thing to say, because every day here in Portugal we keep asking to our sources in sporting, our sources close to the players' agents. And there is a lot of information. I can give you an example. Just by today, early morning, we started to have some messages in our WhatsApp group at Record Portugal with some journalists. Early morning, some information saying that the deal was closed. And then, like 1 hour after that, we had information that the deal is still not closed. So a lot of information, a lot of back and forth with this situation. Strange thing, just why the deal is not closed yet when we are talking about, like I said, 2.5 million euros in a transfer fee of 80 million euros. But that's the point right now. But we have the feeling here in Portugal that the deal is going to happen, but day by day, and the information is still the same.
Yep, we have to wait and see. Now, the sporting chief was very forthright in suggesting that if the player didn't return to training, he would be fined. Is Gyökeres back in training yet?
No, he's not back in training, and he doesn't want to go back to training. Sporting is training in Algarve, the south of Portugal. They are playing friendly games already in the preseason, and no sign of Gyökeres. And he doesn't want to return. He's still, the information that we have, we believe that he's still in Sweden, waiting for the green light so that he can travel to London first. The expectation was to close the deal so that Gyökeres could travel with Arsenal. I think that tomorrow they are going to the preseason in Asia. That's the timing they had now to close the deal. But unless things can be done today, maybe. But of course, I think that Arsenal wants to have the player as soon as possible. But even if they get Gyökeres, I think they need Gyökeres to the Premier League and to start the Premier League. If Gyökeres misses the preseason, of course, it's not the perfect scenario. But I think that's the most important thing is to sign the player they want, and to sign the player that wants to play for Arsenal. It seems so simple, speaking in these terms. I know the player wants to play for Arsenal. Arsenal wants to sign the player. It seems so simple, but it's not that simple. And we are seeing that things are complicated so far. But like I said, we have the feeling here. We have the feeling here in Portugal that the deal is going to happen.
Would it be fair to say that this saga and the way that it's dragging on, perhaps the way that Victor Gyökeres has been acting, means he's lost his legend status in the green half of Lisbon?
Well, a good question. I think that Gyökeres is going to be remembered as one of the best players that played for Sporting. The impact that he had in Portugal is huge. The goals he scored, the key player he was for Sporting, of course. But if you ask to a Sporting fan right now, they are, I think, a lot of them are backing up the president. And against the player, because of course I think that everyone has the right to, and Gyökeres has the right to play for Arsenal. He has the right to have his dream to play in the Premier League. We all respect that here in Portugal, the fans, the press. But the way he's dealing things by missing training when he has a contract, he has his wages on time. He's cherished by the fans, and when you have that status and you miss training and you push and you put pressure on the deal through his agents, we believe, of course, I think he's going to leave for a small door, and he could leave as a legend. Of course, as the Sporting side, no one will, of course, put that in perspective or will ever criticize that. But the way he's behaving as a person, of course, it will be a sad end for a great player that played in Portugal.
Yeah, they're clearly unhappy. If we could see that banner again that the fans held up, if you could just translate it. My Portuguese is not great, but ninguém está acima dos intereses do clube. What does that mean?
No one is above the interests of the club. So no one is above the club. The club is the most important thing. Players go and they play and they leave. You can have a player, even if it's the best player they have or one of the best players that they had in the last years, and he is. But this banner from Sporting fans is really clear. Sporting is way more important than any player. And like I said, a lot of fans, I think the majority, backing up the presidents and backing the club and the way they are behaving in this deal, being stick to what they want, the fee they want, and of course going against the player for everything he's doing in this situation.
Yeah, David, one-word answer. If we speak 1 week today, next Friday, will Victor Gyökeres be an Arsenal player?
Well,
one word.
I think so, but I really don't know. I think that I believe it's going to happen. But you can invite me again. I will be here, and I can say what's happening in the deal. So we can have that deal if you want.
Let's get to football then, and Andy can pipe in this if he wants to. But look, we've got to talk about Chelsea. They are the champions of the world. How surprised were you both by their victory over PSG last night?
Do you know, I wasn't shocked, just because Chelsea in European finals are really, really good. I mean, they set up properly. I think Maresca's had a really good season. We certainly did last year. So it didn't shock me. Yes, PSG, we all think are the best team on the planet. But I just had this feeling that Chelsea, if they set up correctly and got all their best players fit, that they could ultimately get the job done. And the way they played that first half, Vic, was absolutely incredible. I didn't see that coming. But now it's about what can they do this season coming, because now the expectation is going to be going through the roof. When you beat PSG in a World Club Cup final, people are going to be expecting you to challenge for the Premier League. So it's been a fantastic start to this season, you'd have to say, for Chelsea, and it's amazing to see what they're going to do next year.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of that, do you think this is going to kind of lift everyone's expectations in terms of them going forward? Because, you know, I think they've lifted every single major trophy there is to lift. I mean, that's quite the achievement, isn't it? So what will the expectations be, do you think, for them this season?
I think they're going to have to push for the league title. I'm not saying they're going to win it, because obviously Manchester City, Liverpool and Arsenal, I think, are still just ahead of them. But if you look at what they've been doing in terms of the recruitment as well, signing young players, you can't tell me in 2-3 years' time this Chelsea team's not going to be one of the best teams in Europe. I mean, they're all quality, they're all young. I think last season they had one of the average youngest squads in the Premier League as well. So I think, yes, you can get carried away and start thinking, right, they can win the Premier League next season, they can win this, they can win that. But I think it's baby steps, I think. But they are showing fantastic progression. I think we saw Cole Palmer back to his best again yesterday, and I think if they do continue on this trajectory, then again in a couple of years' time, there's no reason why they can't go and win the Premier League.
Yeah, and of course he got the Players' Tournament, didn't he? Awarded the Golden Ball for the tournament's best player. It is a year, of course, until the World Cup, though. Do you think that he can really shine for England next year?
Yeah, I do. I think he's fantastic. I mean, yeah, his numbers last season were still incredible, but he probably wasn't as good as he was the year before. But he certainly started off this one and winning the best player in this tournament, showing what he could do in, as we said, against the PSG side, who we perceive as the best team in Europe. People were saying they were unbeatable. He completely tore them to shreds. So I think if he has another season where he's impactful on Chelsea and Chelsea can win honours and he can score goals, create, then there's no reason why he can't force himself into this England squad. I'm not even talking about the squad. I'm talking about starting for England, because I think he's got that much ability that at sometimes you're going to have to find a place for him.
Yeah, I agree with that. Look, let's talk about Arsenal, because we know what a big fan you are of them. Finally seems like they're getting the player that they want in terms of Victor Gyökeres. Could he be the difference, do you think, in terms of them being title contenders and actually getting the title?
Yeah, I think so. I really do. I mean, obviously they got the signings in, and I think a lot of Arsenal fans were getting a bit agitated about when is the striker going to come in. It looks like they've got their main man now, and I almost feel like that was the final part of the jigsaw, because I think Arsenal were creating a lot. Yeah, they were creating a lot of chances, but they weren't really putting them away. I mean, they score goals as a team a lot, but they needed that guy when the games are tight. Could he be the difference? And I think Victor Gyökeres, you look at his numbers last season for Sporting, they're scary, absolutely scary. So if Arsenal can get that over the line with the additions of Zubamendi, Norgard they've brought in as well, of course, I really think they can. Kepa as well, the goalkeeper. Don't forget Kepa as well. Maybe Madueke as well. I think Arsenal are going to have a really good season this year.
Yeah, I mean, it looks pretty impressive. Obviously, he's had plenty of success at Coventry. That was in the Championship. Though, do you think that experience of English football will help ease any worries about whether he could adapt to the Premier League? Because it's kind of a big difference, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a big difference, but I do think that, you know, he's had a taste of English football, but I think it's the confidence as well. I think the confidence from scoring all them goals, not just in the Portuguese league, but in the Champions League as well. He's looked unstoppable in that league as well. So I just think for Arsenal, they create a lot of chances, but now there's someone to kind of give Kai Havertz competition as well. I think that's important because he's done really well, but he's not as prolific as Victor Gyökeres. But of course, it's going to be a gamble. It's going to be a risk. We've seen Darwin Núñez go to Liverpool after having a fantastic season at Benfica. I think quite happened for him. But hopefully when Gyökeres gets to Arsenal, we can hit the ground running and Arsenal going to push closer to win the league this year.
In the right direction, you know, winning this trophy against such good opposition sends a big statement, and you know, I'm happy with how much the club has progressed, and I hope next season, you know, we're competing in the Premier League, you know, to win the title, and competing, you know, to go far in the Champions League as well. Before they told me that he was going to present the trophy and then exit the stage, and I thought that he was going to exit the stage, but he wanted to stay. If you don't believe in yourself and believe in, you know, what we are building, what chance do you have? You know, today we put on an amazing performance. You know, we showed a different side to our game. You know, we maybe didn't play our best football, you know, but we beat an amazing side.
For the fans, they get bragging rights on every other club in the world. You know, as a club, we've won everything. That's something to be proud about. And then for myself, you know, this is the second trophy I've won this season. It's huge, and hopefully we keep pushing on.
That's why I came to Chelsea to win trophies, and today I did. Very happy, and now we need to rest and start well the next season.
Very proud of them. We did fantastic season. It's not because we lost one match. Congratulations to Chelsea. They deserve it. Well deserve it. And you know we have to continue. And you know I'm really very proud of them. You know we've done amazing season, long season of course. The players they were tired. You see them today. I mean you can see them, but there's no excuse. We'll deserve Chelsea, and you know this is football. I mean we need to stand up again. Now vacation, they take vacation, they come back for next season.
They think it's all over. It is now. The longest season in Chelsea's history has finally ended, and Hollywood couldn't have scripted a better ending. Like it or not, and a lot of people don't, Chelsea can call themselves officially the FIFA Club World Champions for the next 4 years. They defied the odds here. They outplayed and at times outfought the mighty PSG. Cole Palmer, who else, was the star of the show. He scored 2 great goals and he set up a goal for João Pedro as well. This tournament was supposed to be about Messi, Mbappe, Dembele, Kane. But it ended up being all about Chelsea, Cole Palmer and Donald Trump. We had Robbie Williams pre-match, we had Coldplay at half-time, and we had the President of the United States taking centre stage for the trophy presentation. The whole occasion was slightly surreal. The stadium was packed, the football was high quality, and the FIFA President, Gianni Infantino, looked like the happiest man in the world. His dream had come true. But here's the thing, this tournament has been very controversial. But Chelsea don't care about all that. This has put Chelsea back on the map. This has made Chelsea great again.
They vaulted themselves today into the conversation to go and win the Premier League next season.
Unsavoury scenes in that fight towards the end, and in the end it wasn't too bad a season really for Chelsea, was it? Securing a Champions League qualification for next season, finishing inside the top 4. Did look for a little part of the season like they weren't going to do that. They won the Conference League as well in fine style, beating Real Betis in the final, and now they've won the Club World Cup in convincing fashion too, beating Paris Saint-Germain 3-0, so ended up being a pretty good season. How on earth did they manage this? Because we were talking with Alex about this game yesterday on the show, and you know I was saying I couldn't really see any other way for Chelsea to get a result from this, that it was going to be another comfortable PSG victory, given the fact that, Bayern Munich managed to put in a good performance against PSG earlier on in this competition, didn't manage to win it. Botafogo did beat the Parisians, but other than that, didn't really see much of a way for Chelsea to be able to get past them, but they produced a perfect game plan.
And go back to the Champions League final, they beat Inter 5-0, they beat Real Madrid 4-0 in the semi-final, they beat Atletico 4-0 in the group stage, and they just were on their way. And we were talking about them as the next great dominant team, as on the level as Pep's Barcelona in 2009 and 2011. And instead they go and lose to Chelsea in convincing fashion. Chelsea did everything right to negate this team. The possession figures look one way, but this is a different game from 3-0, especially in the second half. The way that Chelsea controlled things in the first half, they were able to take advantage of the vulnerabilities that are only theoretically there against PSG, in my opinion. When you look at the first goal, it's a direct ball. You got to go win it off an Uno Mensch. Malo Gusto went and did it, and then that creates the space in the opening. They were attacking 4- and 5-man PSG defenses, as opposed to what usually happens, which is you have the ball and they press you off it and they make it difficult for you to complete passes, never mind actually get up the pitch. You look at the second goal, and it comes from, again, Chelsea being able to win those duels, to give away from Dembele in midfield, and Chelsea race forward, and all of a sudden they catch Mendes and Hakimi forward. And so you see Cole Palmer, what he did in this game, you have to give him a ton of credit, and has a terrific record in finals as well, having scored in the Euro final last summer as well for England in what was an ultimate defeat to Spain. But he was absolutely fantastic on the day. You have to take advantage of the chances that you get, but they were able, Chelsea, in my opinion, today, to take advantage of the things that normally you would only see as, if we can get at their defense when Mendes and Hakimi are high, but no one can do it. And so how are you going to do it? And Chelsea just absolutely nailed it on the day. Manesca with flawless tactics. And he was saying in the build-up, what are you going to do knowing that you have to suffer a lot? He goes, why do we have to suffer a lot? We can play these guys at their game. This is what we try and do. And he implemented his game plan flawlessly today. And honestly, the biggest day of his managerial career and the biggest day for Chelsea since they won the Champions League 4 years ago. This was an absolutely statement performance about not just where they are now, but where they are going as a football club.
And he spoke, didn't he, pre-match about this being kind of a chess match and had to come up with the right tactics. And we saw that they absorbed the possession from PSG and hit them on the break and managed to get those 3 goals. They were good at finishing. It was a good goalkeeping performance from Sanchez. He made a couple of crucial saves as well, getting down well, particularly to save one of them. And all of these players really contributed in a convincing victory against PSG on Maresca. I think there were some people, when they went through that difficult patch in the Premier League season last year, when they were losing those games and started to looking like they weren't going to finish inside the top 4, that were questioning whether or not it was the right time. Was it a big job too soon for someone like Enzo Maresca? But I think he's answered those critics. And now you feel that it was the perfect timing to go for a manager like him and to give him the opportunity to perform at the top level.
Yeah, they were in search of a process manager who was going to implement a style of play and get this team playing more similar to the Guardiola teams. Obviously, Maresca having been an assistant coach for Guardiola at one point, and you see the principles there. And I think there are still times where the Chelsea fans find the tactics not quite what they're used to, or not quite what they're used to winning with. And yet now, at this point, he has won so much over the course of this Club World Cup, and even having won the Conference League as well over the last 2 months in terms of credit in the bank with this fan base, because I think there were some that were just as skeptical as the rest of us, going, is this going to work? Is he going to finally be the man that turns Chelsea around, that develops some of these individual players? And some of those individual players turned in magnificent performances throughout this game and throughout this tournament. Think of Enzo Fernandez in midfield. The way that his role has evolved has been tremendous. Reece James playing in midfield, moving from right back so you can play Malo Gusto. And there's, from the front all the way on back, I think you saw so many individual performances get better over the course of the tournament. And we will look back on that loss to Flamengo, where they're pretty soundly outplayed in the group stage as kind of the outlier, but otherwise beat a couple of Brazilian teams on the way and then saved their best performance for last. They were ready on the final day, and Maresca, I think, wins all sorts of credit here by getting it right against this opponent. It's not just you beat, let's just say they played, I don't know, Borussia Dortmund or even Bayern. It's PSG, the team that we spent 4 days talking about how this is the dynasty of the future. And in 4 days, you're able to figure out how to beat them with all the craziness of being in New York and the publicity and all that. They figured it out on the day, and they got it absolutely spot on.
Having won this, how does it change their expectations? I mean, maybe it changes the fans' expectations, but as a group and the manager, Enzo Maresca, what they feel will be success for next season?
I think they vaulted themselves today into the conversation to go and win the Premier League next season. I don't think before today there was really any kind of expectation that they would be up there on the level with Liverpool in the league last year, with Manchester City, and even with Arsenal. But I think today, by winning this game in this fashion against that opponent, you cannot help but think going forward, this might have been the turning point that Chelsea had been waiting for. We know they've spent over $1 billion on this team, and that they have so much talent, and they keep bringing in more talent and spending and spending and spending, and at some point it was going to work. This might finally be the point where it starts to work. And I think fans have every right going into next season. We won a European trophy. We qualified for the Champions League. We went and won the Club World Cup in the fashion in which we won it. Now it's time. It's now time for Chelsea to be a team that is regularly competing for the biggest honors. They just won one of the biggest honors. And I think now, heading towards the Premier League next season, heading towards the Champions League next season, you can see them kicking on even further. And I think their fans will start to expect, all right, when we come up against Liverpool, when we come up against Arsenal, when we come up against Manchester City in the Premier League, we are ready to go and compete against them and deliver good performances. I wasn't confident they can do that until we saw it today from them against an opponent like Paris Saint-Germain, where they handled them so comprehensively. I really do think going forward that this is a team that's ready to contend.
Let's look at where it went wrong for PSG today, and there are several oven-ready, I suppose, excuses you can make, given that it has been such a long season. They've played in so many games, the fatigue element of it didn't really show up today. So many of these stars were off their level, anywhere near the kind of level we've seen in the last couple of months or so. Was there anything that you think Luis Enrique watched this game and is going to be worried about prior to the start of next season?
For me, it's only about the vulnerabilities, because we saw this with Guardiola's Manchester City teams when they would get hit on the break fairly regularly. It seemed like PSG had solved that problem, solved the problem of being incredibly attacking, committing numbers forward, being fluid in their movement, with fullbacks getting forward into attacking positions, with midfielders dropping back, and yet somehow they figured out the spacing and getting everything right. And today, Chelsea found every space that you can theoretically attack them in. And so is that now a game plan that other teams can go and follow and see where the vulnerabilities are in this team? Because every system forgo something and add something. And so when you forgo what they forgo, which is kind of a more traditional defensive shape, are there spaces to go and find? And Chelsea went and found them today, and I think a lot of teams going into next season are going to watch the film of this game and wonder, how can we replicate that? Now, I think a big part of that is, you see the last name on that shirt right there, breaking up a fight, Beraldo. William Pacho being out today was a big miss, it turned out. And it's interesting because I think he's a player that didn't get enough credit, enough conversation didn't happen around him, because he was a new signing, and he's a player that was relatively unproven on a stage like this, and yet it turns out they really miss him. And so you see kind of those first 6 games, 16-4, 1 against, and all of a sudden they got absolutely destroyed today. And I thought as well, just to kind of talk about those scenes at the end, I thought they were fairly lacking in grace in their defeat today. Taking a terrible red card from João Neves, having a go at Marc Cucurella. It needed a VAR review, but eventually given as a red card. Several other bad challenges, getting involved in the fights and getting involved in the needle. I thought it was poor from them, the way that they didn't really accept their defeat. They're not used to losing at this point. They expect to win, and when that happens, when you get beat, which they got soundly beaten today, I'm surprised that they didn't handle themselves in a better manner, because I don't think they represented the football club very well at all. And it's a sour taste to leave what was a brilliant season with. And that is kind of the peril of having those seasons go over 12 months, is they might not end on the perfect note. If it had ended in Munich against Inter with a 5-0 win, that's the perfect note, but they couldn't finish it off. And I think that left a sour taste in everyone's mouth, and they kind of acted out as a result. I thought it was really poor from PSG in the end.
Not great to see towards the end of the game. But in the end, a pretty successful Club World Cup, wasn't it? It kept us entertained.
Yes, indeed.
Plenty to talk about, and we did enjoy watching the competition.